Other than thank you to everyone who's contributed to the second annual tree lighting celebration last month. It was a big day. So we want to continue that tradition. And the nice thing was Matt Tilton, who I think was featured in the West Seattle Herald.
Yeah.
He custom made that tree topper, so we want to keep that for a couple more years now.
Yeah.
It was a really nice. It was a really nice turnout. I think about 100 showed up, and when we had the lights turned on, I think cars were stopping and honking.
That's great. Yeah.
Really good video. I think on the White Center now or the West Seattle Herald has it.
Yeah.
Very
Great.
good turnout.
Great. That same Matt who did the tree top, if anyone hasn't seen, there's new bike racks in White Center that he did. He's a blacksmith, and several of the businesses paid themselves for the bike racks, and they're worth going up and looking at. They're really nice. And he did a special one in front of the storefront with a sheriff's badge in the middle of it. It looks really, really nice. So that's a good thing. Okay, so we'll move on to Mike.
Doug Harrell is
this
time.
Mike Martin, your new city manager.
Thank you very much. Happy holidays, New Year's, all that stuff since we last met. Thanks for reminding me of the Boundary Review Board meeting. We have a council meeting that night, 2 new council members getting sworn in. I'm going to go to the Boundary Review Board and other staff members with me there. So this will be the first council member meeting I've ever missed in my career. Anyway, we don't expect any surprises. We've talked with the staff, and we expect this to be very straightforward. And there are undoubtedly going to be usual things that come up at the very last minute. We're not concerned about them, and we think this is pretty straightforward, and we're confident of a positive outcome there. I wanted to talk about libraries and Smith, but just briefly I also wanted to tell you that we're working a lot now on an initiative I don't know that I've mentioned here called Kids and Cops. And what we're talking about doing is funding some additional police officers for some period of time, a couple, 3 years, and then taking money and providing direct grants to elementary schools within the boundary of the area. And the intent is to fund pre-K through third and improve third grade reading scores. So we're generally talking $300,000 to $400,000 a year per school for 2 to 4 years, something like 3 to 4 years, and perhaps longer. We're convinced that the city has 2 major issues. One is a perception of crime, not the actual crime itself. And we know that we can fix that within a couple of years, and the command staff and I've been working on how to do that. And then the second element is there are schools, and we know that the schools are kind of our single greatest impediment to getting the younger couples to come to the city and stay and feel good about putting their kids in school. And it has an economic development impact. It'll be a real positive thing for the immigrant community as well. So we're kind of excited about it. It's a radical departure from just about everything that most other cities are doing. And we're talking about direct grants to schools, not to the district, which I think will distinguish it from some other projects. So more to come on that, but we're kind of excited about that. I didn't expect Nyan Nguyen to join us tonight, but I'm glad he did. You all know Nyan, I think. Do you all know Nyan? He worked with the CBA. And as I said, I didn't know he was coming, and I hope he doesn't think he's going to get overtime tonight. It's not in the cards. Do you want to say anything now? I know you know these people. Do you have anything to do?
Sure. I'm glad to see a lot of familiar faces, David. So I'm working with many of you in various capacity with the White Center CDA and with the community development group doing a lot of things in the White Center business district, and I'm on the other side working for the city government and assisting with a lot of different projects. So I am honored to be here tonight and looking forward to work with the council. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to focus my comments a little bit on the library, or the library issue. You probably don't know that we put together a little ad hoc group. And it's very informal, but it's been very interesting. The members include Barbara, who's been at both meetings, representative from the library, Boulevard Park, White Center, and then staff. So very small, very short meetings, very focused. And before I go on, Barbara, do you have anything, any kind of general overview comments about the group? Or? So
No,
we really just kind of tried to disassemble the whole thing and say what makes sense. What is it that we're trying to do here? Because from the beginning, I've said that it's easy to stop a project. It's much more difficult to make it go forward in an intelligent fashion. And I've had it happen to me in my career, and I don't like it when it happens to other agencies. So we stopped, at least for the time being, the notion of consolidation, at least right now. But I really felt obliged to be able to go back and say this is what we think should happen. So to that end, we convened these folks and said, clear your minds. We're not considering any of these individuals representatives of a part of the community or representative from the library, or Joe McDermott's office was there also. I really was trying to assemble just good, clear thinking minds and to get the benefit of those thoughts. So we've had some interesting discussions about what, in a perfect world, the libraries would look like going into the future. Whether they should consolidate or not, whether Boulevard Park needs to stay open or not. And a couple of themes that emerged. I think there's general and strong agreement, or there's not consensus, but general agreement, that the Boulevard Park Library is a unique facility and it serves a function that is greater than its being a library. It's a gathering spot, it's iconic, in that it is the sole representative of government there, except for the new City Hall, or the City Hall North there. It's important to that community for a lot of reasons. So I think, in my mind at least, I'm beginning to understand that that's kind of one of those things that is probably a no compromise, that particular facility has to stay open at that location. And how it stays open, what it looks like, how it functions is a whole different question, but the building and the function, something about it needs to stay. Regarding the White Center Library, that's really where we've been focused a lot. And interestingly, a lot of the discussion around White Center is, the White Center Library is this notion that that library has also additional importance beyond it being a library, and it is that it is White Center centric, that the community identifies with that library, it's important to the community for all kinds of reasons. And so we've talked about where might a library that is White Center centric be located. In other words, does it have to be right there? Could it be north? Could it be south? Could it be more central? And we haven't come to any conclusions about that, but there was a feeling that if you move it 1 inch south, it's not White Center centric, and if you move it north, it's not something that the library is too enamored with. So we've been doing some research. There are very legitimate issues about wanting to consolidate. There are very legitimate issues for not wanting to move it north. They have to do with transactions. Seattle people come in using the libraries, they use their libraries. It's not complicated, it's just intricate. There is also a significant issue having to do with what would happen in the event, and this is just blue sky now, but what if Seattle annexed that area in 10 years? And they just built a $15 million or $10 million facility up there. The common wisdom has been that it just reverts to Seattle, or it goes to Seattle. We're questioning that. We don't know that to in fact be the case. And it looks like that's a lot more gray than at least I've been led to believe in the past year or two. So we're exploring that. We're looking at the question of social justice. We're looking at economy of scale. We're looking at economic driver. And we thought, well, if we could put it anywhere, where would we put that, and what function would it serve in addition to being a library? Well, it's a very powerful economic engine. And so I would hate to lose an opportunity to make use of the synergy that might be available by locating it somewhere that had economic value as well as value as a library. So again, no conclusions, and this has really been a pretty free-ranging candid, I would say, enthusiastic discussion. But I felt it's been really profitable, and I've learned a lot. And hopefully, in the next month or so, we will, kind of draw these discussions to a close and kind of figure out where to take it from there. But again, the goal is, I don't feel good about stopping the project. I feel like we have to advance a recommendation, suggest what it is we think ought to happen, and why it is we think that should happen. We need to be able to make a good cogent case, not just we want it. With that, I'd be glad to take any questions.
On the library, one of the strong points for the somewhere in the current location is the proximity to the schools and the amount of use that the students make of that.
We discovered there's better places. If that's the issue, there are better places to locate that facility. If proximity to the school is a controlling issue, we can find better places to put it. But
that is being considered also.
Schools, transportation, all those things. But we went beyond that. We're actually looking at, okay, what does it mean that this community has largely been the place where low-income housing is located and that sort of thing. Is it not time that the social justice issue, which is trying to balance those scales out, giving something back to the community to begin to take those sorts of issues into account? So we've gone beyond the transportation, we haven't begun to talk about operational costs yet, but that's a very legitimate issue. And the library's correct in saying that's something you got to think about. I can tell you, because that's what we think about, bureaucrats.
I think you ought to invite the City of Seattle mayor to your city council meeting, because the people that speak there are finding all kinds of money that he could use if he knew about it.
Yeah, we'd like some of that money. I have been, I've had very brief, cursory conversations with folks in Seattle about how the whole library thing works, and there are complicated issues there, but it's all solvable.
Well, I think one exciting thing that we talked about was, because for a lot of us, we were looking at, we wanted it right at that same location. And then, when we start bantering around ideas, and one idea was moving it more toward the downtown area of White Center. And having, if we had some nice, shining new facility right in the business district, how wonderful that would be for the community. It would bring people out, it would be an inviting place, it would make it safer. So, we can't get stuck on just the idea of it has to stay right where it is. And then there were some other sites too that were closer to the schools. So, I think we have to, open our minds to maybe moving it. We do want to keep it, we were talking about what is White Center-centric. My idea of White Center isn't, is really just that area surrounding, the downtown area. And as you move out into Shorewood, which is still the unincorporated area, because that's what Ann from Joe's office had stated, But I said, when you talk to people in Sherwood, they don't say they live in White Center. So, there's a difference of what is considered, White Center centric.
And I didn't want to go too far into that, but since you mentioned it, it's actually a pretty exciting possibility. The problem there is that we've always been told and thought, and it may still be true, that if you move it north and that area's annexed, that asset may go to Seattle. We don't know that for sure any longer. But let's just say, for the exercise we did last night, we had a meeting last night, what would it be like to move that facility into, up closer to the business district, for example, all right? So, how many how many people from Seattle on a month come down and go to the libraries down here?
About 35,000.
35,000 people from Seattle come down and use these libraries. What if 35,000 people from Seattle came into the business district to use that library? Very, very, very powerful, transformative economic engine. And so again, we're not sure what can be done, but I think we agreed that we weren't going to be satisfied that it just necessarily had to be here or there or any particular place, and it's opened up some kind of interesting possibilities.
Just a brief comment. I haven't been thinking out of the box enough, but you know, what's happened with the library there in Darien with the city hall. As far as I can tell, come going there, that's a focus of people now. I don't know how many people, but I know there's a lot of people in the library, but
Yeah.
that's the kind of thing I thought, oh yeah, that could happen. Maybe the businesses there are associated with it, or
And, you know, I think we agreed that we wouldn't be constrained by, it's a library, people go there to read books.
yeah.
We would think there's a library, kids can use it, you know, adults, seniors, all this, it can function in part as a community center, which is how that library in Darien functions. But the notion of having thousands of people come there, you know, and have to, you know, travel right through the heart of White Center, see those businesses that are rising, could be very potent. So, again, we don't know if it's possible, but we're not ruling it out, and it's something we really haven't considered closely before. So I'm very grateful to this group, 6 good people with 6 good minds, and as I say, we do have enthusiastic conversations, but you know, we start out with this, the one aligning principle is that we all agree that libraries are a very good thing. And that kind of helps, at the end of the day, we all agree that libraries are good. And so we're trying to remind ourselves of that as we go through so we don't get hung up in sort of petty other peripheral issues. And we're trying to do something good here for the community, and I don't want that diminished. So, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. All right. To talk about the big news.
Yeah.
The Public Health Center there.
Good evening, and just welcome. Thanks for the welcome to inviting us here. So I am the area manager at White Center Public Health, just down the street, and wanted to just give you an update on our relocation and plan to move to the Greenbridge community this year, which seems to be looming around the corner. We still have a lot of work. Just to kind of give you a brief overview first in terms of the services that we're providing currently and will continue to provide in Greenbridge. So currently we provide the maternity infant case management services in addition to public health nursing home visiting services. And then also the women and children nutrition program, so the WIC program which you may have heard of. They also are providing the reproductive health and family planning services as well. So those services will continue to be provided at our new Greenbridge location. Some of the services that are actually not going to be coming with us are some of the more focused public health nurse home visiting services called the Nurse Standing Partnership. And that's actually a much more intensive case management program. And part of that is because that program is actually expanding. We currently have 2 teams of what we call the NFP program in the county, and we're expanding to a 3rd one. But given the constraints of the space at Greenbridge, we won't be able to house that team. However, the team that is covering White Center in this area will continue to do that, but they'll actually just be located in a different location. So the number of staff that will actually be moving to Greenbridge will be about 2/3 of the staff we have now. So around 34, 35 staff will be moving to the Greenbridge facility. And if you're not familiar right now which area we're talking about, if you know where Dev C is on 108th, on that side of the building, there's those 2 contiguous storefronts. And we'll be taking those 2 that are just south of Dev C. We're still waiting to get a confirmed address, but we think it's going to be 9930, but I would hold us to it until we actually get that certified and built out. And the space is around 6,000 square feet for us. So we're actually going to be consolidating from White Center, which is fairly large space, but it's a lot of wasted and unused space, to that space. And our current status right now, we're just finishing up the design process for that with the consulting firm, and we've been working with the King County Housing Authority as the property owner and manager with their firm to actually make those plans finalized. We're actually in the final design team meeting tomorrow. But we soon hope to have actually a bid out to the contractor and that will go through the Housing Authority and their development group. So we're really close to actually putting an RFP out for construction. Once that happens, we have permitting to go through, which is part of the county system. Even for us in public health, can be a slow process. We hope we can get some of those skids greased, which are being a little bit in-house, and hopefully move that along. And then, if all goes well, we're optimistic that hopefully we'll be able to actually relocate sometime in June. Hopefully before the end of June, but again, depending on permitting and contracting, and hopefully things going as planned. But as we know with construction, that isn't always the case. But optimistically, by mid-June, we'll actually have moved into a facility and be starting to move staff and supplies and that sort of thing. We're really pleased with the design. We're really looking at that building also being not only ergonomic, excuse me, for our staff, but also as much of an environmentally appropriate and environmentally sound space. One of the things in the design feature that I think is going to be really exciting is to be able to capture as much light from the storefront into the facility. So this will really look very different than what we have now, and I don't know how many of you actually have been into the wet center facility now, but I looked at some of the design plans and some of the features they're proposing, and it's going to be like walking into a new doctor's facility almost anywhere, really. So it'll be a good space both for our clients and for our staff. So that's really where we are with the project. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has, or share any thoughts about the facility or the
So is that just, you're just leasing the space then? Is that from the housing authority?
Correct, right. We'll be actually going in as tenants in the space.
And do you serve a wider range? I mean, it's people outside of the White Center area as well?
Yeah, so part of our catchment area, if you will, really extends both to South Park, Boulevard Park, High Line, Urian, as far south even to the line to Des Moines. So it sort of depends on how far clients are living, particularly in terms of making visits to the home. And in terms also of our in-clinic use, that is basically our catchment area. Once you get over toward the West Seattle, over to the other side of the hill, that is actually part of the West Seattle City of Seattle area. Mm-hmm. And the downtown public health center, that's part of their zip code alignment. So some of it does cross over, but it's much more than just centric.
Yeah. Any questions?
Yes.
I have a question. That those were set aside there for businesses, something that somewhere along the line that's not happened yet. You'll be leasing that. Will you be paying property tax on that?
Well, that actually I can tell you the specifics of the lease and the taxes as a county agency. I'm not as familiar about those particulars because it's not county property. I imagine that built into the lease there is some of those tax components, but I couldn't specifically answer that. I can find out and let you know what that is. But
that's some of the properties where are taxed, some are not, and that was set aside for commercial area. It would be tax free, so I mean if we're going to be losing that as far as our
we're basically coming in as tenants, not necessarily as an exempt entity, but I know in other places where we lease, we do still pay some of those taxes, whether they're the same level. I could find out. Yes.
Do you lease the current property? You know, where you're currently in?
Well, you'll hear a little bit more about the property. We do pay a lease fee. We are also tenants. The property actually belongs to King County, but under the Parks Department. We've had basically a long-term lease agreement with Parks since we moved in, but it will revert back to Parks, and you'll hear that in just a minute from Katie in terms of the property after we vacate.
Any other questions? No? Okay. All right, well, thank you, David. And the parks, to talk about the building.
So, just to follow up on what David said, when the property was established many decades ago, with public health as the property, it was basically kind of public health property to deal with, I guess. And when public health vacates a property, that's when it will kind of formally revert back to parks, to a parks property. And so one of the big questions for us has been just kind of a timing issue, of making sure that public health is able to make the move, have things set up, and once they actually vacate the property, that's when, I guess that we kind of take ownership of the building and that sort of thing. Currently, the White Center Food Bank is there. They have a 15-year lease, I understand, and they're 5 years into that lease, so that will continue. And really, I think part of the question is what would be the plans for the building for the property after that? Right now, we've been needing to have a better sense of what timing was. That we've been contacted by some groups. We're definitely interested in having the property continue to have kind of someone there, that we're not planning on having that necessarily be park specific. That we know that there are community groups that were interested. The actual building has really been set up for medical purposes as well. So in terms of doing kind of a walkthrough and seeing what the building is, we're very interested in seeing if the space couldn't be used by probably a combination of both kind of for medical purposes and also kind of and/or nonprofit groups or community groups that might be interested in being located there. So it's one of the main questions has been timing. That at least one of the initial groups that we haven't done outreach until we knew kind of when it would be available, when people would be able to move in, and what the space would really be kind of capable of holding. Up until now, public health has needed to kind of work on their plans, and just in the last week or two, we had a better sense of what the timing might be, that the latter half of 2012 looks very likely, and that as a result, we've been kind of planning to do outreach at the beginning of this year to both community groups and also potential kind of local medical groups. We've also been contacted by Harborview in terms of who else might be interested in having programs at the building. So really we don't have set plans yet. We've been trying to be kind of open to what the timing was going to be, open to who is interested, and also just see what kind of opportunities that there might be. So I don't know if people have questions about that.
Could you give us an idea of what nonprofits have been interested in the building?
We haven't done extensive outreach just because of that idea of not knowing. I think when we were originally hearing about it, we thought it might be in the first quarter, and so knowing that it's second, maybe even third quarter. At one point, the food bank may be interested. I know that we talked to the CDA about the possibility of were there other groups that were interested, but we really haven't done that outreach yet. We've had kind of a couple of groups contacting us to see if there might be a possibility. One group in particular, though, they needed something back there, so that really kind of remains to be seen. And we're definitely open to, if there are groups that are interested in contacting us, we'd be very interested. As I mentioned with Harborview, that was a group that just contacted us last week. So far it's been very much a word of mouth, people contacting us, because we haven't felt like we had enough information to be able to give a lot of confirmation about what the timing would be and what the specifics would be. So the upshot is that we do want to have probably somebody coming in, possibly several groups coming in, depending on how the space is, who is interested in what their needs would be. But we would imagine that there could be, kind of 1 to 3 groups possibly moving into the space. We don't want to keep it vacant for a long time, but at the same time, we also have to be realistic about really having the space available before people can make plans to move in. So those are really our main constraints.
So the Department of Parks is actually the owner of the property, and then people lease it from,
Well, so what's happened up until now is that it's been kind of part of the overall county property, and so facilities management has been managing it for the last about 50 years. This will be the first time that it's really in parks ownership to be management. And this is unusual for us, that we don't typically have properties that we're leasing out to other groups. So this is really something that's kind of new to us. In a couple of instances, we've had community groups that have leased space from us, usually just one group, and it's very specific. And those are kind of throughout, in a couple of places in the county. So this is kind of new territory for us. But there obviously is interest in space, and we're definitely interested in seeing what kind of partnerships arrangements that we could create that would make it available for groups in, that would be able to serve the community.
Did Harborview say what kind of programming we have there?
No, and it was a very much an initial, just, they said, hey, we heard that you have space and we'd be interested in learning more. So really, that's the only kind of contact that we've had so far. So haven't met with them, haven't talked to them more. Very hard to say, you know, how firm, that's not firm, but it's just, there are definitely groups that are interested.
so is there any way, you know, as a community, that we would know beforehand what is going to happen?
Absolutely, and this is really just kind of our initial, there was a question about what's going on. I guess what I'm coming to the group to say is that we haven't, this isn't coming with a laid out plan of this is what we're definitely doing yet. It's very much an initial, we just learned of this last year, that it would even be reverted to park property. And that this coming year that we'll be seeing what kind of groups might be interested and seeing what kind of groups would make sense in the space, given that really a good deal of the space is set up very much for clinics, that it's not something, that it would make sense to continue to use it for medical purposes most likely. And there are other parts of the space that are much more kind of open and broad, and that other groups, it's very easy to imagine them using. And so it's seeing what groups might be able to coexist in that one space, and really being open to, you know, what the needs of the community are, who might be best served by the space. So, and if people have suggestions that way too, we're very open to it. We'd love to hear it. I'm sorry, you had a question.
Well, just a couple questions. One is, I know there's been some controversy at Hicks Lake over having a commercial business go in there to sell food, I think. I'm not clear on that, which is on Parks property. I was wondering if that kind of operation could also be put into that building. Is that a commercial potential, or is it a nonprofit, medical only?
It's not, we hadn't really contemplated that. We'd only really contemplated more the medical, just because the building itself has been set up. And also the, more the community groups, partly because of the food bank already being there, and who would make sense given, who would be complementary for the food bank being there. In terms of, at Lakewood Park, I believe that there's a concessionaire there.
Yeah, that's right.
And generally, we do have other parks where we have concessionaires. It's a way of, you know, providing an amenity. Some people may not see it as positive an amenity, but generally it's trying to have an amenity available to people that then also helps support the park. So we hadn't really contemplated having a commercial business necessarily at the public health clinic, but that given the space in particular and how it's set up.
The other question I have is, are you in contact with Miriam? Should they potentially annex there? It's on the agenda at this point. We don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and that is another thing that we have been certainly watching, seeing what's happening, and want to be mindful of what's happening with the potential for annexation. It's also part of the reason why, you know, first knowing kind of when the space would be available, and then kind of going from there, who might be a possibility in terms of coming in, and you know, certainly anybody who's moving space would want to know who's a long-time owner, that sort of a thing. Those are all, I guess, you know, kind of factors that we're considering, but we've really waited until this year. Just, I think the public health only got their kind of more final design just in the last week or so. So knowing that this date was coming up and having a better sense of when a date was is just very recent news. And so
We're kind of a little uptight about the whole thing because of what happened in Puget Sound Park with the library and the King County Park System. a lot of people in this community were not for it.
Any other questions? Okay, I hope that we can just say, have open communication, let them know, what is going on with that property. If there's a way for us to be advised of that.
Certainly, and, I'd be happy either I could come back if we have kind of confirmed dates, or, people who are interested in, the other thing is certainly just being in contact by email too, but, likewise, if anybody wants to send me, at least for now, I'm kind of the point person on this, so I'm more than happy to answer questions if you want to send me an email or anything like that. I brought some cards.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that, until BJ comes, we can kind of move on with our, I wanted to keep it a light meeting tonight because I wanted to go over bylaws a little later. So we could just move on with our treasurer's report.
Okay, we finally finished up our invoices for last year submitted them to Avon on 12/21. We had a $10 nonprofit registration fee, $24.54 for graffiti removal, $141.23 for office supplies and ink, and brochure printing at Staples, $375.59. The money that we had, the $2,500, we overspent by $18.95. So our money was all gone. We took the $18.95 out of our checking account, and we're moving forward.
All right. Thank you. And corresponding secretary report? Okay. So we'll just move on to committee reports. Anything governance? Arts and parks. Do you want to talk about the flag? Yeah. Okay, we'll wait for that then. Okay. Public safety, housing and human services, we're just waiting to hear back from Greenbridge about the task force, next task force meeting. There hasn't been one since before the holidays. Public outreach and transportation.
I've not been able to get, there was a question last week, or last meeting about that divider down the middle of 16th in the business area. And I'm not sure who's still working down there. I know they had several layoffs in the transportation area for reassignments, and I can't get through to anybody that seems to know what's going on, or get anybody to answer their phone. But I don't hear in the next couple of days, I will be talking to the director.
Okay. All right. Okay, so just moving on, unfinished old business, the flower bed planting. So according to Vera, we can plant now. She said the plants are hardy and they'll be fine. And so if, I don't know when people might want to get together on a Saturday morning or to throw some plants in the ground, we need a little more dirt. I need to buy some more dirt, soil to put in there, because, so we can do that pretty soon. It'd be good to get that done, so we can talk about that later. But that's all ready to go.
And we did have an invoice from Bree and Bard for some soil, and so we'll be ready to go with that.
Yeah, I mean, I could just get it in the truck and bring it over just to fill it, and we'll kind of fix around the site too, because people have been driving over it right now. Every time I go there, somebody's driven through. So, okay, so the flagpole and the flag at Steve Cox Memorial Park. Christine, you want to talk about that?
Oh, well.
Okay, well, the flagpole is Becca, that the flagpole.
Well, I just get updated emails from Dan, and one time it's up, and this time it's not. And it's the ground, but now the thing is the flag itself.
Mhm.
So if we do get the pole finishing up, then we have to come up with a flag.
Right, and I think,
I think the county.
I believe it. Didn't his last email say that after the first of the year, there was
They would.
new money and he could order a flag?
Right.
I didn't say how long it would take him
But,
to
you
get
know,
one, but he
this
could
has
order
been
one.
taking how many?
yeah.
But the flagpole's not even up yet, and it sounds like they weren't gonna get it up till,
Still have a flag to put on.
It was like, it
no,
was.
until
it was
like the
it was
first
good
pitch
news.
in the
So-
stadium, so.
So I don't know if the council wants to look at getting the flag so that when the flagpole is up, we will have a flag. Because who knows how long it's gonna take the county to get the flag? Or maybe pursue the flag from the Capitol?
Well, they're no longer free.
Right, I mean, we
Yeah.
could buy
6
it.
months.
But it takes 6 months?
4 to 6
Oh.
months is what we were quoted by our local congressman.
I thought it was less than that.
Yeah, no, it's way out there. You'd think when it was free, you could see how booked they'd be, but now that they're not free, you wouldn't think it would take so long, but it takes quite some time.
I still think we should